to another podcast for Affaircare, where we talk to help people save their marriages after an affair, or to help affair-proof their marriage so that there is not an affair. Over the course of this month and next month, we're going over a little series of the top 8 topics that are the most popular topics on the Affaircare site. Last week was number 8, and that was 7 steps to end an affair, what to do if you've just found out. So if you'd like, you could just listen to last week's, and then you'd be in on the whole series. This week, we're going to be going over the 7th most popular topics on the Affaircare site. And again, we have another tie. Actually, we have another tie next week, too, which is kind of funny. This week, our topics are exposure, and specifically the difference between exposure and revenge, and then the sample consequences letter. Those are the topics that tied for the 7th most popular topics on the Affaircare website. And so I was going to go over each one of those 2 topics with you a little bit, maybe just go a little bit more in depth and refer you to a few things on our site. So the first of the 2 topics that were tied, the difference between exposure and revenge. We do have 2 references on the website for that topic. One is on our articles page. It's literally called The Difference Between Exposure and Revenge, where we just give you some examples of what the differences are. And we also have a blog that was written in May 16th of 2013. It's called Exposure versus Revenge, and that actually was one of the blogs that sort of made us think of the idea of writing the article, because it's so common that people get confused over what these 2 things are. So just to refresh your memory, this is one of the steps in the 7 steps that you can take to end an affair. It's in the CDE, that's confront, disclose, expose. And confront is when you go speak to your spouse just by themselves and tell them that you know and you want them to stop. Disclose is when you would disclose it to one person, and you and the one person that's kind of like somebody they look up to go and talk to them. You disclose it to one person. Expose is the one that really confuses people. The first thing that does kind of confuse people is that they think, well, isn't it just going to make my spouse mad if I expose their affair? It'll push them away. Now, on the one hand, that is kind of true. Because, on the one hand, they are going to be angry. This is true. And when people are angry, that is not necessarily attractive, if you know what I mean. When they're mad at you, they're not thinking to themselves, ooh, I'm really attracted to this person. I want to be with them. But on the other hand, when you expose like that, and you follow the rules that are set up for it to be exposure versus revenge, what happens is that your spouse comes to realize, first of all, the people who are going to be harmed, if you will, if there does come to be a divorce or separation in the marriage, that kind of thing, the family breaks up, those people are going to be notified that there's something going on. And if they are if they have the moral fortitude to help with the marriage, they have that opportunity to do so before it has gone too far. Which, obviously an affair is pretty darn far, but I'm just saying they have the opportunity to maybe help. But B, part of the reason sometimes that spouses, slip into their affairs is that they don't respect the loyal spouse. They've lost respect. And when you expose, basically what you're saying is, I'm not willing to lose my character because of your bad choices. I'm not willing to lie to others or to cover up your issues, and you can choose to do anything you want. You're free to choose, but I'm going to choose to be honest, forthright, and upright in front of everyone. And so this actually, I know it's kind of strange, but it can make them, even though it makes them really angry, once the affair is exploded, it'll be like bombed, it can actually kind of drive them toward you, because they realize that you respect your own self and they are to respect you. You have done something respectable. See what I mean? So first, that's one thing. Is will they be mad? Yeah, they will. They're going to be mad. This is part of the price you have to pay. It's just like when a teenager breaks one of your rules and you have to take the car away. They're going to be mad. But that's okay. You need to take the car away anyway. That's the cost of making the bad choice. Same with your spouse. Yes, they're going to be mad. they are always free to choose to do the right thing or do the wrong thing. So that really doesn't change. But what's changing here is that up to now, you kind of have kept it quiet, and you've a little bit, it's like you haven't told anyone. You've kind of kept their secret. Well, now you're not doing that anymore. You're not keeping their secret. So that's one very common thing. The other thing that kind of tends to confuse people in exposure is the idea of revenge. People tend to think of it in terms of, like, I'm going to do this to punish my spouse, or this is the punishment my spouse gets for lying to me, or that, that kind of feeling. And that's not the case. So let's just define the term a little bit really quick. Revenge would be an action that's taken, purely for the reason of hurting the disloyal, hurt them back, make them feel the way you've felt. You're going to hurt them as much as they hurt you. The motive is hurt and harm. And that usually is revenge. There's no benefit to the revenge. It poisons the loyal spouse because it's poisoning your heart, and it poisons the marriage. So that's revenge. That's not going to be of benefit. Okay? Exposure, on the other hand, is acting in a way that is like no longer keeping the affair a secret. As long as the affair is active, and as long as the loyal spouse silently goes along with it, the affair has no chance of dying, frankly. They're not calling for help. They're basically helping the affair. So what exposure is it's not coming from a place of, I'm going to hurt you. It's coming from a place of, I refuse to cooperate with adultery. It's coming from a place of, stopping the denial and pretending it's not happening and facing the truth. Exposure means you're going to tell the people that are going to be affected by it so that they can maybe help, but if not, at least they know the truth. So, just so we can define the idea of, the difference between the two. So the goal of exposure is not to publicly humiliate. It's not to embarrass. It's just to be truthful. And what's actually embarrassing in this instance is the fact that your spouse actually acted like they did. So this is another thing that can kind of confuse people. Oh, why would you put out our dirty laundry? Why would you drag my name through the mud? When the loyal spouse tells the truth, all they're doing is being honest. They're telling the truth. Nothing wrong with that. That's okay. The part that's hanging out dirty laundry, and the part that's dragging the name through the mud is the fact that the disloyal committed adultery. Had the disloyal been loyal, then telling that truth would have built their reputation and would have, it would be hanging out clean laundry, so to speak. You'd be garnering praise because you've been really loyal. So all you're doing is shining the light on what the truth is. So does that make sense? So I hope that kind of explains what the difference is between exposure and revenge. With exposure, there's very strict laws, if you will. For example, you don't just go around and go to like everyone in their workplace and give them a copy of the sexting chats. Especially if it's a work affair, you might go to the person's boss. Because they would be then using work time and work property to further sexual advances, which is illegal, So the boss would need to know. But if it's not, then if you went, you don't just go haggity-paggity to like post it on the street corner or stuff. That would be hurting. Okay, so you can kind of see. Now, finally, the last thing that we're getting a little bit of is people that say things like, Well, what about, there's been some court cases lately with, if you put sexts or intimate phone calls up that they're private and the people can't get it. How about the guy who's got into in Michigan, I think it was, who got into his wife's emails and they were going to sue him for that and stuff. Okay, just so you know, as I understand it, I'm not a lawyer, so don't necessarily take this as legal advice. But as I understand it, those kind of court cases, you have to read the facts very carefully. For example, there was one where the sex texts and the chat, the court had ruled that those were private. Well, in that instance, there was a married woman, a single man, and the single man's girlfriend. And the girlfriend posted the sex chats of the single man and the married woman. Well, the reason that was, the court did hold that up because the girlfriend is not being married. She has no legal right to that kind of stuff. She has no legal standing. She's just a girlfriend. So the single man, that would be private, like from a legal point. Okay. Now, if it was his wife, and she was posting the sex of, his stuff with another married woman, there at least she'd have a legal leg to stand on because she has just as much right to the property that the emails would be discovered on. She has rights as the wife to intimately know her husband and to know what he's doing and who he's talking to. So that would be different. See, this is why you need to look at those cases. If you hear of them, look at the facts very, very closely before you go freaking out and saying what is or isn't legal or that kind of thing. The other one where the fellow was in Michigan and he had, that was a married couple, and he broke into his wife's email and found out that she was cheating with her ex or whatever. Well, in that instance, the problem was not that he broke into the email because it was a computer that was in their house, and she had her passwords in a notebook by the computer. But instead of using that, like looking at the notebook and opening it up and looking for, what he did is he used some hacker code that he wrote that broke in that way. And that was the problem. The fact that he had that kind of training and then wrote some kind of code that hacked her password, when her password was sitting right there and he was her husband. He had a legal right to look at her password if he'd have just opened the notebook instead. So see what I mean? Be careful when you read those things to find out the facts of the case, and don't be discouraged. If you are a loyal spouse, you have some legal right to look at your spouse's things and whatnot, and exposing them. They're going to say stuff like, "Oh, I'm going to sue you for libel and stuff." It's liable, or defamation of character, that kind of thing. It's liable or defamation of character if it's not true. Like if you said on there, "My wife is a cow and she's clearly a human being, not a cow," that's a lie. That would be defamation of character. But if you say she slept with another man, and she actually had slept with another man, and you actually have evidence that she slept with another man, then guess what? They can't sue you for defamation because it's true. So exposure just means telling the truth. And usually it's in a way that's not necessarily making a billboard. That would be just punishing your spouse. You're going to be telling the people who are going to be affected, and you're doing it because you're saying, "I will no longer cooperate with adultery. I'm going to risk you being mad at me in order to save our family," basically. Okay, so we've gone over then the difference between exposure and revenge, and I've kind of given you some of our resources on the site and everything. The other topic that was tied for 7th place on the Affaircare website are the sample consequences letter. And this is also a part of the 7 steps that you can take to end an affair. If you remember, after the CDE, confront, disclose, expose, we do the step that I can't stand the name of, carrot and stick, but that's the best name I can think of at the time. By the way, we're still having that contest if you have an idea of another name for that. But the step after that is the step that we're dealing with, which is the consequences step. Okay? Now, this can kind of confuse people because, especially if you have kids, it can be pretty hard. So people, I think, we have a page that's one of our articles. It's called Sample Consequences Letters. We have on that page, I think it's 7 sample letters, letters that people have written to their spouse to enter this consequences stage. And so this is not the one that was that really garnered a little bit of interest on the Ask Affaircare How Can You Be So Heartless article, where the lady had where they were talking about breaking it up. That's no contact, so that's a different topic, and we will be discussing that one in the future. It's one of our more popular. Matter of fact, it's next week. Yeah, I'll just tell you now. It's no contact is next week. But this week, so we're discussing the consequences, and this is the one that is right after the carrot and stick, where you've been trying to show your spouse two things simultaneously, right? On the good side, here are some of the changes I've made. Here are some of the needs that you have met here at home. Here's some of the good stuff you could have, the benefits of saving, putting your effort into saving the marriage and returning to the family and everything, whilst also simultaneously allowing them to experience the consequences of their choice to have an affair, allowing them to see that the needs are not met over here, that it's going to cost, it's going to hurt, and so they're kind of getting a taste of the costs of an affair. Well, what happens, of course, while you're doing that's the carrot and stick part. Your little the fire of your love is going to be dwindling because they're not meeting any of your needs at all, and they're going to be dumping some on the fire. They're going to be extinguishing. And so what fire you do have is going to be getting smaller and smaller. There will come a point at which you barely have love left for them. It's really getting, maybe you have a coal left, or one little piece of log that still has got some love, and you could possibly still build a fire, at least isn't put out yet. So you realize you've come to this point where you say, I need to not be in touch with you to maintain what little bit of love I do have, because I don't want it to be put out. Okay, so this is kind of it's before legal separation, but basically what you're saying is, I need to not be in touch with you, in contact with you, as long as you're doing your affair. So the parts of a consequences letter that are important, there's a couple of parts that we recommend that you include in the letter. The first part is a part that you include in there that does admit or talk about what your part was in the breakdown of the marriage prior to the affair. Now, often people will think there was nothing going on. Our marriage was fine. And that's partly just denial a little bit, because maybe in their mind they thought things were okay, but clearly in the spouse's mind there was trouble. So something was going on. Then the next phase that sometimes people will realize is, okay, maybe there was something going on, and I knew it wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad, right? So what we want to do here, the first part of the letter, is to include some portion that's talking about, now that I've looked at love extinguishers and what they are, I realize that I was actually doing these things. And what frequently happens with people, and they don't even mean to do it, is when they first get together and they're doing all those love kindlers, that seems so natural, but they're not living together, right? Then you start living together a little bit, and a little bit of extinguishers are in there, like he hangs the toilet paper upside down, she squeezes toothpaste in the middle. There are a little bit of love extinguishers, but really not that much. Then a little bit more happens. Maybe he loses a job. She has kids and loses her figure. They're tired. They're not having sex as often. Whatever, right? And a little bit of more love kindlers are getting in there. They're kind of getting medium, right? And they don't mean to. And so what happens is those, even then, you're not going to have a bad marriage, but it's like these little things that are driving little tiny wedges into your marriage and separating the two of you. So what you can say when you're doing this letter is to start wow, now that I look at the extinguishers, I do realize I contributed this and this and this. Maybe I did work too often. I should have been more willing to put work down and come and just sit and listen to you and talk with you and spend time with you and have fun with you. I should have made it more of a priority to come and spend time with you and just us alone, not with the kids, and whatever it would be. So that's one part. You need admit the part that you played prior to the affair. That is something that you've learned new. Okay. You might. I personally encourage you to put in there a little bit of a plan of, like, now that I realize this, the way that I intend to change is this, and then give yourself some time to actually practice that. But it can help sometimes to put into words what your plan is on, now that I realize that I did this, here's what I intend to do in the future. So that's just a suggestion I personally like. Then the next part is to say right out that until they are willing to end the affair and never, ever, ever have any contact with the other person in any kind of way, that you need to part from them. Avoid contact with them. End contact, whatever. Essentially, it's not like legal separation, but it is you're going to. What happens a lot of times is that the disloyal will live with the other person. Maybe they're out of the house and they're living with the other person, but they constantly still call you. They constantly still pick fights with you. They constantly still expect you to come over and mow their lawn, whatever it would be, right? They're kind of still in your hair and in your life. And then when you say, well, no, of course I'm not coming to mow your lawn, then the disloyal spouse and the other person, they have you to blame for all their problems because they're keeping you involved in their life, and that's their little backup plan, that they have this common enemy now, which is you. So what you're going to say to them is, no, I need to have no contact with you as long as you're in the affair. And simultaneously with that, give them the exact clue what you need to repair, to get back in the marriage. So, for example, it's not like you're saying to them, I never want to have contact with you again. What you're saying is like this: because my love is being so extinguished, I need to have no contact with you while you're in your affair. As long as you have any contact with the affair partner, I cannot be in contact with you. If you're willing to end all contact with the affair partner, never ever contact them again, and work with me on our marriage, I want to have you back. See what I mean? So you're giving them as long as you're in this affair, no contact, but if you're willing to give me 100% of your affection and loyalty, I'm willing to talk. This gives them a clear message of what it takes to get back. Hopefully they've been getting that all along in all the other steps as well, but I'm just saying, this way at least it's written right down what they would need to do to get back. Then you might discuss in your letter the steps you've taken to facilitate, so to speak, no contact. Now, the hardest part people have with this no contact is when you have children. Obviously, one of the favorite tactics that disloyals have is that they will use the children and having to communicate for the children as their little excuse to contact you. And so they will try to call you, and then they'll always say that it's for the children, but in real life it's not. It's just to bug you, to be in your hair, to be in your life, to continue to try to control you, whatever it would be, right? So if you do have children, you'll need to make some arrangements to have this no contact stick. To my mind, there are two ways that can be doable. One way is the way that you would use a person that's like an intermediary. Okay, now this person is going to be basically you would set up maybe, let's say, a Gmail, let's say something that's in your name, right? This person is going to get, anytime you need to contact me, contact so-and-so, and then they will contact me on your behalf. That way you're not ever having to talk to your disloyal spouse or anything. You would just hear from your friend. You also would have your friend open your emails for you, open any letters that look like they're coming from the spouse, any of that sort of thing. So that if you get something, you're not even reading it. You don't read texts. You don't answer the phone. All that sort of stuff. If they leave a voicemail, the intermediary does it first. This is supposed to be sort of like you have a person that's a buffer between you. And if there is an emergency, they can contact the intermediary, and the intermediary will contact you immediately, and you will get down to the emergency room right away. But really, the chances of that are fairly slim. Usually they want to try to contact you for all kinds of reasons, like, I don't have any food in the house. Well, guess what? You left me for the other person, so you and the other person have to figure that out now. And that's part of the costs of their choices. So that's one way, the intermediary, having a person who's kind of the step between you and your disloyal spouse. The other option I know of that works is like it's the folder. It's like an intermediary folder. And what you do in that one is you get a notebook that has like the top that's a folder, where you can put papers in. And that's what goes back and forth between the households with the kid in the backpack, okay? So in that folder, you put everything. You put, like I would put in there like the kids' homework, any appointments they have at the doctor office, any time you guys need to speak back and forth to each other regarding children things. You could write in there, like, the kids have Friday off. Do you want to have them that day, or shall I have them that day? That way, anything that is said is documented and written down and presentable in a court of law. If the disloyal spouse is somebody that's trying to be controlling or trying to alienate you, it would be written down and documented in a court of law. So, that way is a little less effective, honestly, because they'll still try to get in touch with you, so to speak, and still try to nag you through the notebook. But I've seen that one begin to work somewhat. If you stop taking the calls, block the texts, block the email, the only way they can get through to you is the notebook. Either they'll start to freak out and go crazy in the notebook, in which case it's documented in court, and then they'll get the hint on that one and pretty soon start leaving you alone. Guess what? They're going to have a big old dose of reality when they start to realize they can't be in touch with you anymore. They've basically chosen to not have you in their life anymore. That's usually a big dose of reality, and that's the sample consequences letter. So those are the things that you need in your consequences letter. In a super quick summary, it's here's the part I played in the breakdown before the affair. Maybe here's the way that I plan to address those issues that I had. For sure, you would say then that I need to be in no contact with you as long as you're in the affair. You need to express, here's what you can do. I want to have you back. I wish, I would want to rebuild our marriage. And the way to get back to that is this. And then somehow indicate to them what plans you've set up to maintain the no contact, whether it's an intermediary or a notebook. Those are the but then we've got 7 examples of the ways that people have written their no contact letter. There's many different ways that you can express these concepts and get them across. So my suggestion to you is to read over the letters and then sort of try to adapt them to be your voice so that your spouse understands that really it's you that's written them. You're not just copying something. But the idea was hopefully to get some creative juices flowing, get you some examples of the way other people have done it, and then you can go ahead and send that off. So, okay, as I mentioned, next week we'll be going over the 6th most popular topics on the Affaircare site, and the 6th most popular topic is no contact. Again, this is one of those the purpose of no contact, when your spouse has said, yes, I want to reconcile, and you need to officially send, a no contact letter. Why do we have to do no contact? That confusion. What's the deal with no contact? Why do we have to do it? How do I write this note? That's the 6th most popular question on Affaircare. So we'll be going over that next week, and I hope that you will be joining us. We look forward to talking with you. Again, if you have any comments or questions about the podcast or the video, we welcome your comments and look forward to speaking with you. You could leave a comment if you're reading it on the blog, or likewise if you're watching the video on YouTube, you just leave a comment and we'll do our best to answer. If you're listening on iTunes or on Stitcher, we would encourage you to send us an email. Our email is affaircare@gmail.com. And as always, often I write back, but my dear hubby David, he gets the emails as well. So sometimes you're going to get a little email back from him, and that's always a little bit fun to get a different voice. So we look forward to talking to you and hope that it's been helpful, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.